Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Maverick Mindset Radio Show. I am Adam Williams.
And I'm Ashley Muckenhop.
And this is the radio show for the dreamers and doers. It's for those who are willing to step into the arena.
Some call us the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers.
We don't accept the status quo. We leave the world better than we find it.
We approach each day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. We maintain a rational optimism about the future.
This is the Maverick Mindset Radio Show, brought to you by me, Adam Williams, show 57. I'm pumped up about this one.
Yes.
I have so much commentary, but I don't want to provide much of it because I really just kind of want to turn it over to our guest here. So show 57, today we're talking about building real estate wealth, or if I had known more about this and carried more weight with our guest today, the book would have been called How to Get Rich Slow, which I think is...
Oh my gosh, Adam, that was the original title of the book.
I know, you told me.
Yeah, Get Rich Slow.
Yeah, that's what you told me, and I'm
That's a catchy title.
I think it's so
yeah,
good.
it is.
Yeah.
So, yes, today, best-selling author Joel Miller is in the house. And frankly, I should have put some more words, because you're not just a best-selling author. You're a real estate investor. You are a private lender. You're a speaker. You're now a celebrity. I feel like every week you're doing a different podcast or guest appearance somewhere. So we are really grateful that you're here with us today. And we'll get into a little bit of our backstory of how we know each other and how you got to this point. But before we jump into all of that, of course, we are blowing your minds every Wednesday at 9, streaming live at 9:05, Maverick Mindset Radio on Facebook and streaming live on YouTube. You can also find all of our episodes on Spotify and Apple iTunes. And then, of course, always more information at maverickmindsetradio.com, where you can also get your coffee mug and your notebook and all of your Maverick merch using the code Maverick10 for 10% off. And this is going to be a really good show today. I know I say that every week.
Yeah. We don't have bad shows.
But I say it every week because it's true.
Yeah.
So if
We're just reiterating it.
Yeah, if you like what you're hearing today, as always, share the show. We're going to have some really valuable information coming out of today, because Joel's book is so packed full of really great information, and I know he's just a wealth of knowledge and has been a really good mentor and advisor to a lot of real estate investors. So if you like what you hear today, go ahead and share the show. If you don't like what you hear today, chances are you're one of my followers on TikTok, because holy crap, am I getting some hate.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's wild.
Oh, no. Why?
Who could hate
what have
Adam
you done
Williams?
on TikTok?
I have opinions that,
know what they say
that
about
really
opinions?
miserable broke people disagree with.
And
they're really willing to share those opinions.
Oh, good for them.
Well, bless your
bless
heart. All right, Ashley, hit us with the quote of the day today so that we can get into talking to Joel ASAP.
Okay. All right. So real estate, and I changed this last minute. Sorry, I do that. So the quote of the day is: real estate isn't just about property. It's about building a foundation of generational wealth. I don't know about real estate. I don't invest in it. I don't do anything. So
You'll
what
be
does
a
that
believer
mean?
by the end of the show.
Yeah. So what does that mean when people say that? That is, how are you building generational wealth when you're investing in real estate?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
Well, what we're talking about is being able to pass on wealth to your descendants because of something that you've built up that they could take over. My son is taking over, or picking up, shall I say, where I left off. I haven't even left off yet. I mean, he's starting on his own. He bought his first rental property a week out of high school last year,
Wow.
and he just bought his second one about 6 weeks ago. But the succession plan is that he will take over the properties that my wife and I have built up over time. And so he gets to not start with nothing where I started out.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So that's some generation. He's the generation.
You laid
that
the
will,
foundation
Yeah,
for
right.
it.
And I fully believe that he will be able to take it further than I ever did. So
Nice.
Well, that's part
That's
of
the plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the generational wealth, especially for somebody like Joel, who started, and after we tell this story, I want you to get into your backstory, but starting from nothing and building to where you are, it's not just the real estate that you convey or transfer to the next generation. It's also the skills and knowledge that your kids see you pick up along the way. And that's that's always been the important thing for me. For me, it's in entrepreneurship. For you, of course, it's in real estate. But even if your son was starting at zero, he's still better off than so many other people because he's seen what you've built and how you've done it over that period of time.
And maybe I should interject right now that I actually wrote this book, although it is, for sale for everybody and has become a bestseller. I wrote this. I started during COVID. Took me, a few years to write it. Another year for production. Came out last fall, but when it was begun, it was at a time when it became apparent that my son was going to follow me in the rental property. So this was really written as though he may be the only person that reads it. So in other words, what's in here is not written as though I knew I would never meet the people that would read this and they wouldn't be able to personally hold me accountable for the information in here. The person that will hold me accountable for what I say lives down the hall. And there's nothing in here that I wouldn't tell my own son to do. There's nothing here that I haven't done or I wouldn't do if I had the opportunity. And so it was written with no BS. It's straightforward. It's what I would want my own son to know. And so if you read this book, it's pure.
That's a good filter through which to run things. It's like, this is the same advice I'd give my own kid. So the book is Build Real Estate Wealth, Enjoy the Journey of Rental Property Investment by Joel Miller. JoelMillerBooks.com is his website. Of course, it's available on Amazon and other places, but there's a lot of great information.
And locally, I might say at Werner Books in Liberty Plaza and Pressed Books across from Frontier Park.
If they can keep them in stock.
Yeah. And 8th and Green Garden, I should say.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the fun thing about this is you had locally a really great reputation for real estate investing and private lending and just being a wealth of knowledge on this stuff. But now your impact, probably partially because of the book, has really gone national. So you're leaving here today, heading to a national conference to speak about these same topics that are in here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's really great. So I think it's worth me just sharing a little bit of my backstory because this is my pitch for the book. Joel and I think, initially met when you were on the board of the apartment association locally.
Yes, I believe I was still president, and you came to our association with what you're going to say right now.
Yeah, so I was brought in as the solicitor, as the attorney for the association, and one of the benefits of being a member of that association, and I recommend the apartment association for anybody who's even thinking about owning real estate in Northwest Pennsylvania. One of the benefits that you get is you get to talk to a lawyer for free when you have questions. So you can call in, and if they can't answer your question, they send you over to the lawyer. And that was me for a period of time, including that time during COVID when theoretically you couldn't evict anybody and there were a lot of restrictions on what you could and couldn't do it as a landlord. So I heard every horror story there was about being a landlord because nobody called me to say, hey, all of my tenants paid their rent on time this month.
All is good.
Just wanted to say thanks for your support, right? Nobody ever called and said, yes, this is actually passive income, which everybody thinks is such a great thing, even though it's a bit of a fallacy in a lot of instances. They would call because the tenant that they evicted went and clogged all the toilets and overflowed the sinks and flooded the entire house, or
Did you actually get a call like that?
Absolutely. Okay. And so we not only had to deal with the tenant, but then of course insurance initially denied the claim. So I heard all of the horror stories and I thought, I am never in my life investing in residential real estate because I've only seen the downsides of it, or I've seen them so consistently. And then you wrote this book.
It's written for people who don't think real estate is for them.
That's it.
Among other people.
Is it better? Yeah. I always wonder this because people either invest in it to then turn around and sell it, or they do the renting side. What's better? What's more financially stable? Yeah, or beneficial.
The first thing you mentioned is commonly called a flip.
Yeah.
And I have flipped over 100 houses. I started whenever the flip wasn't even a real estate term because the TV shows that used it weren't out yet. We called it quick turn or whatever. Yeah. And that's where you fix up a property and sell it to the end user, But buy and hold is the rental property, and that's what gives you the residual income and appreciation over time. I mean, you eventually sell that property. It's just that there would be a longer time in between when you bought it and when you sold it. And in the meantime, you make money that keeps coming in. If you buy a property and just resell it, then that's the only check you get. Okay. So I used to flip a house and take the profits from that and use it to buy income producing property. That's the key to building wealth, is owning things that produce income. because otherwise you're just trading time for money.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep, there's only so many houses that you can flip in a year if you're managing all of those properties, or true for any other business or job that you have. Whereas the portfolio, you can build the team, you can build the systems, and continue building wealth with it. And so I think what's really interesting is you talked a little bit about why you started writing the book and what the process was like and how it took a couple of years. And I think anybody who picks this up is going to believe it. You've ignored the 40 plus years of experience that you had before you put pen to paper. But I mean, just the way this thing is organized, where every single chapter is sort of laid out with real estate analogies that you're before you start, you've got a vacant lot, and the education that you get is sort of like the site clearing and breaking the ground, and then bringing the tenants is like adding the windows. So it's kind of a cute
build real estate wealth is building through the chapters of the book.
Yeah, exactly. And then my other favorite thing, and I can't believe I've never seen another author do this. There is a lot of bold text in the book. And what you say at the beginning is you can read only the bold text and understand this entire lesson.
Right. If you did nothing but skip from bold type to bold type to bold type to bold type through the whole book, you will get the whole idea. But if you discovered you were in an area, hey, I want to learn more about this, then just stop and read all the words.
Yeah. I can't believe more people don't do that. I mean, this is 400 and some pages of 40 plus years of experience.
The people that review it say that this is not the kind of book you just buy and read and put on your shelf. Say, hey, I read that. That was great. It'll be over there on my shelf. You buy this and you read it and you park it on your desk if you're an active landlord. Yeah, because it's really a go-to resource. There's like 150 or so bullet point checklists throughout the book that are all these things you can just follow. Like, for example, a list of questions to ask people that are calling about an apartment you're advertising. A list of questions to ask somebody that they gave as a reference whenever they apply for the apartment. A list of questions to or things to cover with a contractor. The items that you would want to check if you're doing your due diligence on a new property. There's even a list there of if you're just starting out, the hand tools you should have, So, you just keep it there to refer to it.
So give us a little bit of background. Like, why are you qualified to educate people about this? Where did you start? What was the process that you went through of building your real estate wealth, so that we know that you're legit when you're telling us?
Well, I'm in my 48th year of landlording, and it really goes back to two things that happened to me in junior high, very distinctive things that, pardon me, really set me on my path. Number one, an investor built 4 4-unit apartment buildings at the edge of our subdivision, on some lots that just hadn't been built on yet. And we all lived with our parents, in these single-family homes, and this pardon me, this rental thing was a little new, but I have a distinct memory in about 8th grade of going to my bedroom and sitting down and doing the math on how this rental thing works. Like, somebody else owns that building, but these people live there and they pay to live there, and the investor makes a profit on it. I said, I want to do that, and I put that in my back pocket, like when I'm qualified.
Yep.
Later in my life,
when I'm
not in 8th grade, I can do that. The other thing is that an older kid in the neighborhood built a pirate radio station in his basement with the antenna on a flagpole in the backyard, and that's when I decided that I wanted to be a disc jockey. And at the time, of course, that meant you go on the radio, and we haven't mentioned it, but I started as doing radio work in high school, actually, and then in college, and was on a couple of radio stations here in Erie, but actually one, WCCK/K104, became K104. During my show one day, I am the first K104 jock. Okay, can we acknowledge that?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. The first song I played was "Dancing Queen" by ABBA.
Oh, I love that song.
And so I went to college at Grove City, where I could be on the radio and study accounting, which I wanted to use. You can use accounting no matter what industry or line of work you go into. So I eventually did a mobile DJ appearance while I was still at the radio station, and I only stayed there like a year after that because I realized I could make more in one night than I was making all week at the radio station. So I left and started doing the mobile DJ thing, and then almost immediately bought my first rental property, and that was January of '78 when I bought that property.
How old were you?
23.
Okay.
And 23 and a half. And so it went from there. I just kept accumulating properties and building my mobile DJ business, which is part of what the book is about, is how real estate does not have to be an either or thing.
Yeah.
You can add it to something else that you are already doing, or you have a passion about, a career that you don't want to leave, and you want to do that for a while. So I did mobile DJ for 35 years, 5,051 appearances. And just kept acquiring property.
Of course you tracked that.
Yes, yes, I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
And I have a spreadsheet for all those, literally. And so in 1991, I started flipping houses, flipped over 100 houses, and then in 2018 became a hard money lender to the other investors in this area, where I am funding their projects for a flip or a keeper rental property. If they're flipping, then we get paid back. These are short-term loans, like within less than a year.
Right.
And if they're flipping, we get paid back. I say we, it's my wife and my money, and we get paid back whenever they sell the house to whoever's going to live there. If it's a keeper rental, what they're doing is they're buying a property that's cheap and stabilizing it to get it to the point that a bank would look at it for permanent long-term financing. So in that case, that might involve a rehab or changing the tenants, raising the rent, whatever. And at that point, we get paid back whenever they have the closing to refi the property. But I just think that this is the time for me to say I feel so at home here with the title of this program because I'm a maverick. I have never had a job.
Yeah.
Unless you count the 3 years I was on the radio, most of which I was still the part-time weekend guy. And even then, I'm just getting paid to do my hobby, which is select music and listen to it.
Yeah.
And play it. So I've always been an entrepreneur like you, and you got to remember, when I started to do the mobile DJ work, that wasn't a thing. We didn't even know what to call it. My first business card says disc jockey for rent. I found it the other day. It's a thing. I have it. It's what I didn't know what to say. And so finally we settled on mobile DJ. And that I pioneered that in this part of the country.
And you're talking doing dances and weddings and events and things like that.
Exactly. The first thing was at Clymer High School in April 3rd, 1976. I got paid $75.
So Joel,
changed my life. Yeah.
I don't know if it was in the Erie Times article or what it was, but I was reading, and you say in there, you have to understand that you don't need to know everything before you get started. And I know Adam and I have talked about that in the show before too, because a lot of people think they got everything in place and then they actually never get started. So what is your mindset behind that?
Well, people get caught up in the paralysis of analysis sometimes when they're trying to get started with something. They think they need to learn everything possible about it so they can take the first step and not make a mistake. Mistakes are fine. You learn from mistakes. You learn one more thing, how not to do, or how not to do it or something. And so you see people at real estate seminars and conferences, that they're attending things all the time and they never buy anything, or they don't expand their business, and they think like, if I just go to this one more boot camp or conference, or just read this one more book, and hopefully it's my one more book, they say, then I'm going to be rich. Then I'm going to take my first step. And the thing is that I'm a big proponent of the Apartment Association, like Adam was talking about. It's the Apartment Association of Northwestern PA. It's the professional organization for landlords in this part of the state. Why? Because you network and we educate. And that is what removes fear, is education. And fear is what keeps you from moving ahead on things and doing things. So if you just get started and you join an association like that, then you find yourself around other people doing the same thing you are doing or want to do, then you learn more. And you learn by doing. Just buy your first small rental property, and the learning curve is real quick, and then and then you just keep going from there. You don't have to know how to develop a mall before you buy your first rental. So that's the thing, is just take the step and get involved with other professionals around you that will help catch you when you fall.
Yeah.
yeah, they've already made the mistakes,
Right.
So they can help you
Yeah.
avoid some of them.
Yeah.
Plus, I think the other thing, and we talk about this a lot on this show, is surrounding yourself with people who have done what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're going to learn, and yes, it can help remove fear, but it also can be really motivating and sometimes add some accountability. So if you join an association, and there's a couple guys locally that we've seen do this, where they go from nothing to 50 or 100 units in the span of a couple of years.
I have seen it. I've been involved since 1981 or so with the Apartment Association. And just to finish your question about qualification,
Yep.
I think it was 2009 I got on the board of the Apartment Association, and a couple of years later I became the president. And I am our second longest serving president. I was president for 6 years. There's somebody back in the 80s, a realtor, that was longer. And now I've been vice president for like 8 years because everybody is president keeps asking me to be the
Yeah.
VP.
You can never get away from
Yeah. So, yes, you just get around these people. And since I've been involved with the organization so long, I've seen so many people come and they don't own anything yet. And now they're on the board and they're among the biggest investors in the area.
Yeah, and that's every single one of those people. None of them would say that they did it all alone.
Right.
They would say they've worked with mentors. A lot of them would mention you by name.
Now I have to say, when I started, the association wasn't around.
Yeah.
You know, and I spent a couple of years reading hardcover books by Al Lowry and a couple other guys that was my education. There were no seminars. Eventually, it moved into the late night TV half-hour information gurus selling their tape courses with the manual.
Yep.
You know, cassette tapes. You get like 8 or 12 of them in a book, a folder with a manual to follow along. I did that. I just threw them out a few years ago.
Yeah.
I had a bookshelf full of those things.
Well, and it's amazing now with the spread of information. A lot of that stuff that was in the I of course am a huge proponent of courses and audiobooks and all those resources, but also so much of that information is available for free now out there that if you want to
there was no internet back then that
Yeah.
I could search even a tax law.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So-
And now it's like you go on Amazon, you spend $30 on a book like this, and it's like, all right, that there's more value in here, in my opinion, than 4 years of college.
And I might add, it is also available as an ebook, but not yet as an audiobook. And I need a vote here. Do you think I should read all 460 pages into a microphone and sell it as an audiobook?
Yes.
People keep asking for that, but
Yeah.
it'll take a long time.
'Cause
to do.
Just read the bold stuff.
Yeah, I'll just exactly. That's great.
There you go.
I would do two versions of it, because the one thing that you said that I really like is real estate is not an either or thing.
Right.
And if one of the things that's holding people back from making their first investment or scaling their portfolio is they're working full time and they have family obligations and other stuff going on, but chances are they're driving places. So being able to pop in the audiobook and listen to it, or the abridged version of it. Yeah. I also personally will do both. I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm flipping through a book.
People keep asking me for it. It'll come eventually after we've hopefully made some money on this one.
Yeah.
Because that'd be quite an expense and time to go in a studio and sit down and read
Another
that
reason
much,
to go and buy Joel's book.
Yeah.
So he can.
If you want the
make it
audiobook, help me.
I'll tell
Help
you
me,
what,
please.
the other thing is, so I recorded the audiobook for my book, which is only a little over 100 pages, so it was way less work. It was really fun. It gave me ideas for the next book, and I honestly,
Now, when you did that, did you go off here's the backstory for that?
Oh yeah,
that paragraph.
Oh, you
there?
mean you expect
ads,
me to sit and
add
follow
comments?
a script?
Yeah.
No, I editorialized. I added details. I added stories. I added jokes because
See, that's why the author should do it as opposed to just hiring somebody. Because
I think so. Yeah. Now, not every author should do it, but
yeah, you're probably
Some
right.
people are better just left silent.
yes, authors like us that have stories, and of course the voice for radio. It's a good fit for us. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to deviate just for a second and get into our standard questions that we ask our guests. Although we have gotten through a couple of these, and then we'll get back to talking about building real estate wealth. Joel Miller's best-selling.
You want to talk about some tax stuff too, right?
We might do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
If the people are into it, I think but I don't know. Based on what you've said in the first 24 minutes, I already have so many other things I want to talk about. So, all right. So we already talked a little bit about your name and your business, and we got your backstory. So let's fast forward to our third question of what's going on in your business right now.
Right now, the main thing that I'm doing, other than the hard money lending and maintaining the rentals that I still have, is appearing on many podcasts like yours
Yep.
that essentially are in connection with the book. This is how you do a book tour now. And you used to go out on the road, and now you sit in front of your computer and do a Zoom call. You know, you are only one of two that I've done face to face, and I've been doing, you know, like one a week since January.
How many appearances have you done? Because I know you have a spreadsheet for this.
How many podcasts? It depends on where you draw the line, because some are like things that get recorded and then they turn it into a podcast later. But it's somewhere between like 17 and 20, right around there. The agent I hired has to get me 4 a month for a year, you know,
that
and
agent?
so
We need that.
they book me on the podcasts that they research that are all in the real estate / investment / personal finance space, and then many of them that have been recorded since January, like half of them haven't even come out yet because there's always such a lag from you know when they.
Are you from the ones that have come out? Have you seen increased traffic?
Yeah,
increased
there's always a
sales?
spike on Amazon when it gets released.
We love to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, well, go for it, Ashley.
Ooh, yay. Okay. Imagine that you could have a panel of 3 people, living or dead, to help you with your most important decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you choose and why?
Living or dead? Well, let's go with Jesus. I'll tell you
I
what.
like that.
You know, that would be my first choice.
He's a smart dude.
And gosh, Abe Lincoln.
Oh,
Yeah.
Honest Abe.
Yeah.
Right? Is that?
Is that the? I feel like that's not the first time we've heard Abe Lincoln.
Yeah. Someone else chose Abe too.
Now
But
I know
I-
why you wouldn't tell me these questions ahead
You
of
gotta
time.
think,
Really
yeah,
put me on the
You'd overthink
spot.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, who would be my third person? I wish I could have my dad back. He passed in 1993. So
Okay.
yeah, because
What-
he started out with. I mean, he never owned any property other than that house in that subdivision I referred to earlier. Was not an investor, but my mom and dad were supportive of the DJ business and the rental property business, and my dad, who was able to retire early enough that he then was able to work with me on my first properties that I did whenever I was doing all the repair work.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's really cool.
that was really cool. We grew a lot closer during those years.
All right, so I get Jesus, I get your dad. Why is Abe Lincoln on the list?
Just because he was a smart guy that was able to bring order to chaos.
That's good. All right,
Yeah.
little good.
Now
good
Adam's gonna
endorsement
go
of Abe
on
there.
a, what does Christy call it when you go on you start researching something, you get hyper focused on.
hyper-focus?
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
it's gonna be Abe Lincoln next.
he was on the penny. Okay.
My dad's name was Fred Miller, by the way, and Fred is my middle name. I guess I want to give him some props.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, that we went from such a positive, uplifting top 3 people to next question is: have you ever hated anyone?
I'm sure I have, but I can't remember who they are because I want to forget stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I hope you didn't want me to, or any of your guests, to name somebody, you know, but
No,
maybe
this
they
is-
have. I
this
don't
I
is
mean,
actually-
it'd be entertaining.
Yeah.
if
This is
someone
actually the
does.
question I'm thinking about
Yeah.
changing because nobody wants to admit it,
Uh-huh.
or because of the people that we have on this show are so focused on growth and development and improvement.
Let me
that
say
they-
I've caught myself hating a thing or a person, and you've got to get past that.
That's the consistent theme
Yeah,
with that question.
right.
Is everybody says, yeah, maybe for a little bit,
Yeah.
and then I
Yeah.
got over it and moved on. And I think that's
Because bitterness eats the container it's kept in.
Oof.
Very
You
good.
see,
Where-
it's
where
like
did you steal that quote from?
Bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for your friend to, or
Heard that
the
one.
person you hate
Yeah.
to die.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Yep.
All right, good advice
So,
there.
All right.
Next one.
Adam, I think you if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? Did you put that in there? The Dancing Queen?
Yeah, other than Dancing Queen is your first song on the new radio.
Well,
That is not
you know,
in
when you
there.
work in a radio station like that was the next song in the rotation,
Yeah,
man.
okay.
You know, it was just an accident.
Yeah.
You know.
So other than Dancing Queen being the first song, What would you do differently if you had to do it all over again?
You know, I have to say, I'm not sure I really even want to change Dancing Queen. That's a great song. You know,
All right.
I played that in almost every one of my mobile DJ shows over
Yeah.
the years. You know, but what was I? What would I? You were talking about like in my real estate career. What would I do?
Just in
different?
general, could be anything.
The biggest criticism I have of myself is not thinking big enough over the years. You know, I did okay, you know, with the property and the book and all that. But what if I'd have started pushing harder and thinking bigger earlier on? What would have happened?
Yeah.
Now, I have to temper that by saying I truly wanted to have two things going at the same time. I wanted to be an entertainer, a DJ, mobile DJ, you know, and I wanted to own the rental property. I've often said if I'd have stopped being a DJ and concentrated on investment, that I would have done more.
Yeah.
You know, but you're held back a little bit because you only have so many hours in the day to mess with stuff. So, but that was not my desire. So but after I retired from mobile DJ work in 2011, then I kind of kicked it up a notch with the
Well, and I wonder too.
real estate, you
You
know.
said you started the real estate investing at such an early age.
Mm-hmm.
You became a mobile DJ when there was no such thing as a mobile DJ. So I would wonder, like, how far into either of those journeys did you finally find that mentor or that person that you said, "Oh, I get it now."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back from thinking bigger is they don't surround themselves with a lot of other people who are so far beyond anything they ever imagined. I mean, I was 35 plus when I finally realized, oh, there's more to this. There's more. I can think bigger now because I've seen it made possible through other people. You didn't have the apartment association. You didn't have the courses and the seminars. So you were really out figuring a lot of this stuff out on your own.
Yeah.
But then at some point you probably saw some mentor or some example and thought, oh.
Well, it was. I bought my first property in '78, and that actually was the year that the apartment association was started in the basement of one of the founding members.
Yeah.
You know, and so the association was growing as I was. And I joined it about 1981, and I started just. I would say that the organization was my mentor because every time we had a dinner meeting, we had a different person talking about something to do with our business, and I was getting to know people like John Baldwin, who's like fifth or sixth generation in the Baldwin Brothers organization and long retired.
Yeah.
You know, but he's like a director emeritus for us, and he shows up at a board meeting every once in a while, and you know or at a meeting, and you might be a beginning investor, and you're there sitting across the table from John Baldwin.
Yeah.
You know. So that's the type of organization it is. So that was growing, and at the same time was the advent of all those tape courses I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And I got something from dozens of different speakers, you know, that were selling them, and I have to say I listened to them over and over and over again and made notes, and I still have the 3-ring binder notebook that I made. It's 3 inches thick with I don't know how many dozen tabs in there that were my handwritten notes from listening to and boiling down what they were saying, and I realized not all of them knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
or at least they knew what they were talking about, but they were trying to tell you to do something that wasn't going to work here or that should never be tried by anybody anywhere because it was like borderline illegal or something.
Yeah.
You know, and
something that they had never done in their own lives, but they're more than willing to take your money to
exactly. I often wondered, hey, are you making your money from selling this, or are you actually investing in real estate?
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, the internet has not made that any better for
Yeah.
sure. So, okay, well, I like that. If you had to do it over again, thinking bigger, I think that's a really good answer, and I think I probably share that answer with you. Okay, next one. What keeps you up at night?
That was my turn, by the way.
No, are you reading the names?
For all you radio viewers out there, for all you viewers, can't you see that Ashley is staring at a screen with her instructions?
I wait for my question time. I feel like I was skipped.
You know, there was no such thing as a screen whenever I was in radio
Just had to free
connected
flow,
to an
right?
electronic device.
Have you ever hated anyone? Yeah, my co-host. Quit stepping on me.
but only for a moment.
Yeah. All right. So what keeps you up at night, Joel? Since that's my question to ask.
What keeps me up at night is a relationship that is having a problem. Because
Oh.
if somebody were to ask me, and like, shall I say? I'll just say my answer. If I had a choice of losing all my money or losing all my relationships, I would lose all my money in a heartbeat, because my relationships will help me get my money back. You know, and if I had a pile of money and nobody to share it with, no relationships with, that's empty.
Yeah.
You know, what good is that? So if I make any point in this book, it's that it's relationships are what count. You know, and so if I'm having a problem with a relationship, that'll keep me up.
I think that's a good one, because I think a lot of people come in and answer that question, and it's like, oh, the business, it's the stress, it's the cash flow, it's the employees.
Yeah, the business comes after.
Yeah.
The relationship is before the business. You know?
That's a wise answer.
I
for
like
sure.
that. Not very many people have that mindset. They think in that direction.
Yeah.
I like that, Joel. My
Thank
turn.
you, Ashley. By the way, if you look at your screen there, it's your turn.
You can
Finally.
tell he's been in radio. He knows how to run a studio,
Yeah, he does.
right? Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to be doing in 5 years?
I want to be getting a check from my kid every month because he bought my property and I sold it to him and held the mortgage. That's it, baby.
No pressure.
Next question.
No
Yes.
pressure. No, but I
to
actually
flip
think
that
that's a
around.
really good question, because you have been working
Yeah.
40 plus years, and you think 5 years from now you'll be sitting collecting the check, and what else?
Well, I think that if we have more freedom, my wife will hopefully be retired at that point too, and I think we're going to rent a motorhome. It's not something I want to buy and have in my yard.
Yeah.
You know, and just have a little more freedom to drive around, travel, see stuff across the United States.
I feel like you just took a shot at me, because I have the RV sitting in my
Sitting in
yard.
your yard.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, not all of my assets appreciate, but
Somebody has to own them before.
that's why I'm just a radio host.
You know.
We are we're leaving in a week and a half, 2 weeks. I don't even know, but
Next.
we're doing
Next week, isn't it?
this. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
We're leaving at some
Soon.
point. At some point soon, and we're gonna do cross country. We're going here, Atlanta, Grand Canyon, and back in the RV.
Do you ever wish
That's
that
so
you
cool.
had one that you drove, or do
Yes,
you like the?
those are substantially more money.
Okay.
So the
And that's the kind I would rent, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
'cause I don't want to back a big trailer into a camp spot or anything like
it's
that. You know?
yeah, you get used to it, but yeah, that's
Okay.
But if that's the biggest thing that you're worried about is backing into your,
That's what keeps me up at night.
So that's-
how I'm going.
it's really
how I'm going to back the trailer into the campsite when I retire.
That's it. We talk a lot about on this
Yeah.
show that I too many people make decisions with money in mind and don't make the decisions about what they actually want, right? Like price factors into yes or no of whether you want the thing before you decide whether you want the thing. And I think that's backwards. So it's really interesting now, because we're booking the campsites for this trip, and you have the option that you can get a back-end spot,
Oh,
or you can pay a little more and get a pull-through.
pull through. Yeah.
And is
Oh.
it worth $3 a day to not have to back into
Yeah.
the parking spot?
I'll even say yeah.
I mean, for people like me, but there are people out there that are looking at that going, well, $67 for that back end spot versus $72 for the pull through. I don't know. And I guess it would
That was
matter.
a $5 difference.
It
then?
was a $5
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
I'm pulling through.
These are the really nice pull throughs. Maybe they add on like a patio or a picnic table or something
Nice.
too. So it's not just so I guess maybe it's like depends on how many nights you're staying
Yeah.
and if you're backing in and out every day. So anyway, the things I've overthought this week.
Did we get through all 5 of the questions, or are
did.
there more hard
Yeah.
ones? Yeah,
That
those
was
I
it.
like those. Yeah.
Those are pretty good, and that's
See?
part of the reason that we don't tell people what they are in advance. One, it's a test to see if you listen to the show, which you failed. But two, I think everybody would overthink them, and they'd come in with these rehearsed answers as opposed to just coming up with the
Yeah.
answers off the top of their head. Which yours were really good, so
Well, thank you,
We'll
Adam.
accept all of that. All right, so
You passed.
Let's so we're here, Maverick Mindset Radio, with best-selling author Joel Miller, successful real estate investor, hard money lender, best-selling author, national touring speaker. We've got his book Build Real Estate Wealth with us today, which you can find at joelmillerbooks.com and on Amazon. So let's rewind a little bit. For someone who has zero real estate investment experience, why should they be interested in investing in real estate?
Like me.
Yes.
Well, it gets back to what we mentioned at the beginning of the show about how wealth is built by owning things that produce income on their own. And so when we're talking about investment in real estate, I assume we're talking about rental property, either residential or commercial. But there is something to be said for the flipping part of it, because you get a chunk of money at one time you might use then to do something nice in your life, or buy more rental property. But people, we talked about the either or thing, how it's not either or. Now, I keep in mind that the book does provide all the tools. If your objective is to get to the point where you can leave your full-time job, you know, job stands J-O-B, just over broke, and it has the tools to get you there. But if you want to just add it to something you're doing, you might be doing that, and this is part of the answer to your question. You might be doing that because the thing that you're connected with, that you have a passion for, the job you like, or whatever, maybe that isn't providing as much income as you'd like, so you would add income property to have more income, but also to bolster your retirement, because a lot of those things maybe aren't providing you with a big retirement plan. You know, maybe none, unless if you're self-employed in a business that there is no retirement account unless you're putting your own money into it. Right. You know, which means less money to live off of along the way. You know, so more. This is another part of the answer is like why real estate. I don't know where they got the statistics, but I think it's generally agreed on that more millionaires have been made through real estate investment than any other type of investment. You know, above having a job, above having you know, retail store, or above any particular profession. Just raw numbers, more people have made their wealth with real estate than anything else.
So let's talk about that a little bit. And I think primarily we should focus on that buy and hold type of long-term investment. There's multiple ways through which people build wealth, right? So I want to talk a little bit about cash flow depreciation, appreciation, et cetera. So like there's a multitude of good reasons why people invest in real estate, and in this instance, sort of that residential real estate, to buy it out and rent it out to other tenants. So break that down to people who may not understand the math or how this works.
Well, we have an acronym that is the word IDEAL, and it says real estate investing of this type is ideal. The I stands for income, the D stands for depreciation, which is one of the main tax benefits of, but it's not the whole story of all the tax benefits of owning real estate. The E is what's the E? I'm blanking on what the E. IDE. It's why can't I think of the E? I don't know. Let's go to the A. The A is appreciation. Oh, the E is equity. That's right. You're building equity. Yep. Yeah, equity is built whenever your tenants are giving you the money to pay down your mortgage. Yep. And so there's a bigger difference between the value of the property and what's owed. That's the equity. A is appreciation. That is simply the even if you didn't even have a mortgage that was being paid down, building your equity. Appreciation is the increase in value over time that real estate traditionally experiences. It's almost never a case that real estate goes down now, especially in the Erie area here. Now, there are other states like Florida, Arizona, California, for example, that there are wide swings, and
there's a lot of volatility.
Yeah, there's volatility, and you could buy a house and find out 5 years later it's worth less than what you pay for it. That's a thing. Okay, but not around
in that case, just hold it for another 5 years.
Yeah, and then because you don't really have a loss, so you actually sell it. Right. You know, but that's what the A stands for, is appreciation. And L is leverage, which the rental property business actually runs on OPM, other people's money. If you're not willing to borrow money to buy real estate, and you're trying to save all the money from something else you're doing to get to the point where you can buy another property, you won't expand very fast. You have to use leverage, and that's what the L stands for. And I might just briefly throw in there, there's definitely a difference between good debt, like leverage to buy an income-producing asset, and bad debt, which is like borrowing money to go on a vacation,
Right.
for example, or buy a depreciating asset. With the possible exception of a car that has utilitarian purposes, and indirectly it makes you money, because if you didn't have a car, you couldn't get to where you make your money.
Yep.
But that's ideal. That's why.
So and just to break it down another level, the income piece of that is your mortgage and insurance and maintenance and property taxes. There's an amount that you as a landlord will pay out every month.
Right.
And the idea is you're collecting more than that from your tenants, of course,
Exactly.
and hopefully have a little
Essentially, the tenants buy you the property. The thing is, when the property's all bought and paid for, they don't have to stop sending you the rent.
Yeah.
It still has to come in, and you just then have more cash flow.
So the next one on there is depreciation, which I think some people would think, well, why would I buy an asset that's going to depreciate? But
Well, there's a difference between the depreciation. There's two kinds of depreciation. There's like, I bought something nice and it's kind of getting worn out and it's depreciating in its usefulness or its value. It's going down.
That's my RV.
Yeah. Okay. And depreciation, as we are talking about it, is an accounting term that relates to the non-cash out expense that the IRS allows you to count against your income that reduces your taxable income, your income from the rentals. The depreciation is simply a division of the value of the real estate into a little amount each year.
Yeah.
So
the flip side of that coin is appreciation, where the property actually goes up in value over a long enough period of time.
Right. And that's not taxed on an annual basis. Depreciation is taken annually on your tax return, but appreciation would not be realized until one event, is when you sell it.
Yeah.
And then that's another aspect of one of the advantages of investing in real estate, is that if you hold it for a year and a day at least, when you sell the property, you are going to be taxed at a long-term capital gain rate, which is lower than it's a lower tax rate than your income from anything else, like a job.
And I think related to that is, even if you don't sell the property, but it's appreciating, you can also refinance it. So if you
exactly use the equity.
Yep. So that's where your leverage comes back in.
And those proceeds from refinancing it, in other words, getting a loan against the property and having the bank give you money, that's not taxable money.
It's cash.
Loan proceeds are not taxable.
Yeah, it's cash that you get to do fun or smart things with, or fun and smart things with. So, love it. Okay. So how about if someone was looking for a place to start? So they think, I've got some investments, or I've got this job, or I've got this business, but we have a lot of clients in Pennywise, for example, that they've got successful income-producing businesses, but they're looking for other opportunities, maybe tax benefits, maybe cash flow, maybe some of these other things. What do you think is a good starting point for someone? Do they go out and attend all the seminars and workshops and courses? Do they read 3,800 different books? Like, where's a starting point for somebody?
Buy my book. Okay, next question.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. I guess I teed that up a little bit too easily, but
okay.
Again,
what does my book tell you to do?
There you go.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Well, first of all, it makes a point that you need to have some education. Because education, like we said, is what takes away the fear. So we make the point, you need to have some education about it, but the emphasis is on the word some. You don't have to know it all. We talked about that earlier. So in the book, there's a chapter, it's just about halfway through the book. It kind of takes a break from the progression of the, like, how to do this and that sort of thing, and turns it into how to go from $0 to $10,000 a month in net cash flow. And it takes a fictitious investor from making $40,000 a year and being a tenant to making $10,000 a month in net cash flow. And the first step that the tenant makes, other than making a commitment to putting money aside regularly to continue investing, is a very practical thing where I think it was a 2-unit. We had the investor buy a 2-unit property and live in one,
Yep.
and rent out the other, and then after a few years, moved on to a nicer single-family home that the investor lived in, but he didn't sell the first one. Now he's renting both units in there.
Yep.
And that's a really practical way to start, especially when you consider that there's the FHA program where if you're going to live in the property, you can get into it for a 3 or 3.5% down.
As opposed to 10 or 20%.
Yeah, as opposed to, 20 or more maybe, from a bank with a conventional mortgage. And so you can have multiple FHA mortgages. You can just have only one at a time, though.
Yeah.
So what if you found a 4-unit? And you can do this FHA thing for up to a 4-unit property. And you moved into one. Now you got 3 tenants paying you money.
I think the influencers call that house hacking. But
Yeah,
what I love about that chapter is if I personally was writing this chapter, I said, hey, you want $100,000 a year of cash flow? Well, how many units do you have to own? And then just go acquire those, right?
Yeah.
That would have been my approach to it. But you literally break down, buy your duplex, then buy your next 2-unit, then buy a 4-unit with seller financing. I mean, you break
Right.
down in detail, step by step, the deals to look for and what the math should look like.
Yeah, the first loan, I guess, a FHA loan, and then we have some of the properties with conventional loans, and like you said, some are with owner financing, some are multi-unit. One is at least a single family that the investor eventually moves into, and and some use hard money. That's the term for, like we talked about, where I'm providing financing for other investors' projects.
You're the bank
It's
in
called
that
hard money
instance.
lending because it's lending based on the hard asset more so than the credit score or something related to the actual borrower.
So I have what I think is a pretty strong opinion on this, but I'm curious, what do you think is the number one skill that a real estate investor has to have?
The number one skill would probably, I know exactly what I'm going to say. And I'm going to give you 2 answers. As far as acquiring the property, that's a skill. You have to have some sort of ability to evaluate properties to determine whether it's a viable project. I mean, you look at some sort of rundown house, you have to be able to determine whether it's got good bones or not, or whether it's a but house. A but house is something like you could fix it up real nice cosmetically, but there's still going to be something wrong with it. There'll be an objection to, like, it's next to the railroad tracks, you can't control that, or there's a dump next door, that sort of thing. But I will say this, Adam, the absolute number one skill, if you're going to operate rental property, is to develop the ability to select tenants. Because your ability to select tenants is paramount to determining what sort of experience you're going to have in this business. You might be good at finding property, which was kind of my first answer there. You might be good at fixing it up. You might be good at financing it. You might be good at, all the back story stuff like running your office and all that. But if you're not good at selecting the people that are going to occupy this piece of property that is worth tens, maybe millions of dollars for an extended period of time without your direct supervision, then you will not have a good time.
That's really interesting. I mean, so your number one driver of success in real estate is people.
Yeah,
right?
relationships.
There you go. That's really interesting. I think for me, again, not being an expert on this stuff, but I would think it would start with a little bit of math and accounting. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, the mortgage is this much and the rent I can collect is this much, without realizing, hey, there's more to it than that. There's other expenses, there's capital improvements, there's reserves that you want to have. So I always thought that was sort of step one of underwriting or evaluating those deals. Then you get into the systems of how do you operate at scale. But tenant selection, that's...
When you get the wrong tenant, none of the other stuff really matters, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
That's a really
Ashley,
good point. I really love that.
And you didn't even read that off a screen.
No, that was all purely right out of my experience of being a tenant. I rented
you're
up
ready to
until
run
a
out
year
and buy
ago.
a property now.
Yeah. I don't have the other skills.
Yeah, we'll buy her the book first.
Yeah,
All right.
I need the book first.
I'll sign it for you.
Thank
Joel,
you.
this has been a really great show. Really appreciate you coming on. Love you sharing your expertise, your wisdom
Oh,
with
thank
us.
you so
Of
much.
course, everybody go out and check out Build Real Estate Wealth by Joel Miller, also known as How to Get Rich Slow in Real Estate. Have a great week, everybody. I believe in you.
Thanks, Adam.